Once upon a time, a very, very long time ago, in the year 2013, there was a very small, sweet girl. She was living in an urban jungle, back then called London. She was taking care of her grandmother, who was sick and weak, because the politicians who at her time promised amazing urban improvement didn't hold that promise. But our little girl was very happy because the politicians of 2013 talked about big data and open data and citizen engagement to solve all urban problems once and forever. Now, tonight's TED Talk is about today's craze for data and citizen engagement. Taken from a slightly different angle, I want to make sure that what we do today doesn't end up in a scary fairy tale some centuries down the road. Let's get started. Let's talk about big data first. Now, big data is probably the hottest phrase in town today. Technically, it implies gathering and processing a lot of data. Practically, though, it actually is what Dan Ariely said so well a few months back. Big data is like teenage sex. Everybody talks about it. Nobody really knows how to do it. Everyone presumes everybody else is doing it, so everyone claims they're doing it. Now, it brought back some sweet memories, so I got intrigued and I started to investigate. First thing I did is I Googled the term. It got me 13 million hits. 13 million hits on big data. There's more big data on big data than big data itself. It all had the air of a big marketing gimmick, really. So I dug deeper and I figured out it involves a lot of mathematics, a lot of statistics, really, which is when I understood that it truly was a marketing coup for and by mathematicians. But things are much worse than that. Who uses big data today? Mainly executives to spice up their PowerPoint presentation. Just because they're surprised about the big data inside, they presume everybody else must be surprised about it. No. My dear executives, you know, those people who really work in the field, emphasis is on really and work, know about what's happening in the field. Let me give you an example. Visa, if they were to leverage their big data capability on your shopping behavior and outages thereof, they would be able to predict divorces with 70% reliability. 70%. When I heard that, I changed to MasterCard. And I signed up my wife to Visa. Actually, I got her 2 cards to get a second opinion. Now, Visa wouldn't do that. They don't do that. You're surprised as much as I'm surprised, but somebody working in the industry knows about that. Let me give you another example which is closer to what my company does. It turns out that 30% of all the citizens around this globe are not paying their parking ticket. It makes 1 in 3 in this audience. It's probably you, Duncan, I know you, not me, okay? Now, that's a big surprise to you. It is a big surprise to a lot of executives preparing smart city presentations, but there's no surprise in Westminster, who are issuing parking tickets like there's no tomorrow. So my point here is big data is not enough. Big data is only half the way we really want to go. It's not about documenting and building statistics. It's about actually doing something about it. Make it a small action, make it a nudging, make it a big action, but just make something out of it. We know traffic is bad. We know pollution is appalling. We know this planet is dying. Stop documenting it. Do something about it. Okay? So this is what big data should be about in the 21st century. It should migrate from being the big data paradigm to a big action paradigm. Otherwise, we will not make it until the very end of this century. Now, one hope we have with getting big data really leveraged is open data. Probably the second hottest phrase in town. It refers technically to the process of opening up a lot of data. Now, practically though, it is more like that. Open data is like adult sex. Now, the big difference between having open data for money and having it for free is that the one for money usually costs a lot less. Now, my point being is that people presume that data just appears out of thin air. It doesn't. Somebody needs to generate it. Somebody needs to file it, to profile it. This data needs to be maintained. Which business model can rely on data which is outdated, of poor quality, a few months down the road, simply because the infrastructure has never been updated? Most of the really interesting smart city data comes from some sensors or infrastructure in the field. Companies rolling out this stuff go through a really tough procurement process. If they win the tender, they operate very close to margin. And then the city comes along and says, hey, guys, open up your data so the next Facebook can build the great application on top and make a lot of money. Now, me running this company, supporting my 50 people who support their families, doesn't like that. I don't see a win-win here. I'm delaying the deal. I'm blocking the deal, and the big data opportunity is gone. And you think I'm making this up. It happened to us. It happened to our competitors. It happened to our peers. And it's not the first time it's happening. The mere fact that you can't make a phone call in the underground, that you can't make a phone call in London which lasts longer than 5 minutes, that we have wireless data rates of megabytes rather than gigabytes, that we have wired data rates of gigabytes rather than terabytes, is exactly this problem of a broken value chain. We forget that it's not only those who actually need to make money out of the data on top of an infrastructure, we also need to support the infrastructure. Now, let me take this now to a different angle, though. Let me go now to those guys who actually use the data. And let's presume I'm building my great open data application. I'm using data which London kindly provides, traffic information, weather information, pollution information. I'll blend in some other information, build a really sexy app, trying to sell it, and I can't. Because it turns out that the license agreement, which by the way is so complex that I've never read it, prohibits me of doing that. There's some part of the data which is free, I can use it, no problem. There's other part of the data which requires a license fee to be paid, that's all right. But there's one part of the data which I'm not allowed to use for commercial use. So again, my big data and open data capability is dead. So we need a very good license agreement framework in place which values the whole value chain along the open and big data flow. Stronger engagement between really the infrastructure community supporting the data flux and the open and big data community leveraging the value of that data. Now, talking of engagement, and that brings me to my last point today, the term citizen engagement is really heating up now in the urban jungle. And technically, it essentially refers to involving citizens in a lot of decision process in the city, how you construct a bridge, whether you build a tunnel or a park, etc. Practically, I was always very suspicious about it because I'm a very engaging person and I've never been to any of that. So I decided to figure out whether it's all a hoax, and I went out to question the crowd of London. Okay? Now, I conducted it in 3 stages. In my first stage, I did a public survey on public surveys, a bit like the big data on big data. Okay? In my second stage, I actually conducted my own public survey, and in the third stage, I called for people to engage with their city. I shall say I've never reached that third stage, and you'll figure out now why. So in my first stage, asking people on the citizen engagement, I asked about 50 people randomly in London about whether they have ever been in any form in contact with their city. And with the exception of a single person, everybody said no. That single person, by the way, was the only one who didn't know what TED Talks are about. Now I'm wondering if there's a correlation between people engaging with their city or spending that time rather watching TED Talks online. So So here you go. I then asked these people why that is the case, and the majority, some people said, they wouldn't trust the politicians. Others said they are moving houses very quickly, but the majority said, hey, we have just no time, really no time. And that brings us really to the problem which cities have today. It's breaking this routine you see here. It's a really well carved out routine. We work, we relax, we sleep. Now, working is so intense that even 30 seconds of meaningful interaction, no way. And then because you have worked so hard, you want to relax really hard. So again, no chance of getting engaged. And then you're off to bed. Well, there's some form of citizen engagement happening there, but you don't want your city to be involved, right? So out I went to figure out if it's the cities who are so lousy doing the public surveys or if it's the citizens. So I decided to talk to the crowd of London. And I posed them one question, one of the millions which came to my mind, and I asked them, guys, do you think we've done enough with the congestion charge, given we seem to have replaced car traffic jams with bus traffic jams? Now I went out and interviewed a very large crowd. Close to 400 people, to be more precise. And I tried really very hard to take a fair cut of today's society. I talked to a lot of people, kids, elderly, even traffic wardens. There were 3 who bothered to stop out of 400. I really tried to devise the whole process. I was with camera, without camera, with my pad, without my badge, smiley, cheeky, even without my red shoes. Still 3. At some point, I was really scared that somebody would take away my camera and I would lose my video footage for tonight. And the very same evening, I understood it actually really didn't matter at which point on this planet I would ask what type of crowd, at what time of the day, an arbitrary question about their city. The answer would always be the same. They would walk past. But things are not that dramatic, so we have a really interesting insight here, which I want to share with you tonight. So my first observation is there's a very strong correlation between walking speed and the vehemence of people saying no. So people going very slowly would say no, and those who run would bark it, no. Well, beyond a certain speed, the Doppler effect kicked in and it became very melodious for the physicist in the room, okay? So another interesting insight I had is that actually the walking speed was also correlated to the timing when they said no. So people with lays would take their time, and those who run very quickly are very quick. And now fasten your seatbelts. There are people in London who would respond with a no before you have even posed the question. This is like Back to the Future. With this type of relativity effect, I was able to interview thousands of people and finish earlier than when I started. The message I want you to take away here really is people are very poor engagers. This is because they may have sympathy, but they don't have empathy. Empathy is what gets you engaged. Empathy means you have bleeded the problem at hand. People are very good in complaining. If I were a city, I would make it very easy for people to complain and actually also tell them how this complaint was addressed. So that very simple feedback loop of with an accountability at the end makes magic in any vertical you actually apply it to. And the third thing I would like cities to take away is that simply engaging 10,000 people in your decision process still does not make it democratic. Your citizen engagement goes from 0.01% to maybe 1%. You're still losing out on 99% of the society. Chances are very high that the only way of reaching these 10,000 people is electronically. So automatically everybody who doesn't use that is out. These are the elderly. These are the sick. These are the kids. Now, because I'm in the optimism group here, I decided to interview some kids. And I asked the kids what it is what you would like to have in your dream future city. And at the end, I asked two crazy girls to show me what would you do to make people more happy. So nothing of that is staged. It is completely genuine. The kids have not been briefed. Here you go.
Rainbow. No school. Have more sofas. Really more sweeties. Ice cream. Cars. Pizza. To have 2 London eyes, maybe. Candy stores.
Ladies and gentlemen, it took a kid 6 years old to realize it doesn't make sense for London to have just one eye. Thank you.